This video will be all about pattern trading, how to find patterns, how to get notifications on patterns, how to see them on a chart, and also understanding what actually is working quite recently versus what is not working. So let's dive in. So I'm on the Manara Trading Tool for training purposes so that you can see what patterns are, how they map out on a chart, and how they actually play out following the pattern. So rather than give you examples and that kind of thing, there's a heap of great tutorials all throughout YouTube, PDFs and that kind of thing. So go search those if you want to learn how to manually find your own patterns. But the Manara Trading Tool does it all for you over here. So I'm going to go through some of the settings that I like to use first of all. So I want to actually trade the major foreign currency pairs. So I'm going to turn that on, and we'll see down here it shows all of the symbols that are setting up. So they're complete and what time and date they've actually started, along with the risk reward that they're suggesting on this tool. If you do like the minor and exotic, obviously you can add those on. For example, I'll add on a couple now just to have a look at those. Pound New Zealand, Pound Aussie, New Zealand dollar CAD, New Zealand yen, all the pairs that you generally see on most broker platforms. I won't add the TRY, the Turkish lira. It's a bit chaotic at times, sometimes a really big spread. I don't see the Singapore dollar crosses too often either. Euro Aussie, Euro CAD. So that's probably enough for the foreign currencies. This is just the setup phase. So I want to check and see what's around and make sure I'm not including patterns or symbols that I don't actually want to trade. I do actually trade the index markets on a manual basis using the Camarillo levels. If you watch my videos, I do a bit of recaps and that kind of thing on using the Camarillo levels to trade. And I don't really use patterns other than say like your double tops and using support resistance, that kind of thing. But I did notice one day when I took a trade and I checked the index on the Manara tool, it actually showed the opposite direction to what I was trading, and turned out the Manara Trading Tool was right over the Camarillo levels. Obviously, if they're setting up at that time, the time that I trade, I guess it was just a bit unfortunate, but a lot of these patterns aren't necessarily setting up at specific times, and that's why I don't use it for the index trading myself. I will add a couple of metal crosses in, so I want to add gold and silver crossed with the USD. So the reason I'm using the USD cross is because most brokers offer that, whereas you don't often see an XAG versus the New Zealand dollar. And obviously if you want to trade the New Zealand dollar, you can trade it against another pair. So I like to use the standard XAG, which is silver, because AG is the chemical symbol for silver, and then the X, I guess, stands for metal, and then against the USD. And I'm just looking for the XAU USD. There it is there. And I've selected that and we're good to go. So I've set up the securities that I want, and I just also want to find all patterns. So I want to actually show you what is incomplete, what's complete, and what's mature. And we'll actually go through a range of information to help you identify what you're looking at and help you understand what the patterns are, what happens pre and post or during those patterns. And that way you'll get a better idea of what actually happens in the real market. So down the bottom, this is what I like to use just to go through things. I'm going to click on date, and that's going to bring the most recent alerts to the top. Now, based on what I've got set here, the most recent one for a currency is about half an hour ago, according to the time, a little bit under half an hour ago on the 5 minutes. Now I'm going to click it, and you'll see this change up here. It's going to paint the pattern, so I know kind of what I'm looking for. I can drag the price up and down to move it. I can drag the date and time side to side. And basically what's happening here, you can see it's called a deep crab. I've got an arrow here suggesting that it's going to go long, and it's the Euro Yen cross. Now this has kind of been setting up, it's an incomplete pattern. So what that means is it's waiting for the market to come down to this D. So it's a predicted level based on the A, B, C, D, and the starting point back here. And it's basically measuring out the different angles and levels to make a deep crab pattern. Now, some of these patterns are really hard to make out and see if you're just trading manually and looking for it for yourself. I wouldn't particularly notice this as a pattern as such, but here it is. So from the C, it's an incomplete pattern, and it's basically looking to head down to this D level, which is the entry. This is the gray box here. So an entry at 160. And what that means is the market is expecting to get to this D, get in for a buy, and you've got two targets to basically aim for, and then a stop loss down here as well. So I'm going to go through later on the results and that kind of thing that you can see directly in this platform, just to show you what it's all about and what works and what doesn't. Most importantly, you want to try and avoid the ones that don't work, but you want to get onto the ones that are working. So we're going to go through that as well and see if there's anything that we can find, any patterns in the patterns. So you might be thinking, hey, maybe I could just get short and trade this short from the C and see what happens. As you can see, if you had have gotten short, obviously you'd be doing quite well, but that's expecting a really sharp drop for the deep crab to be complete. So who knows whether that's actually going to get there or not, but the other points in the pattern so far have actually measured up very closely. So we'll see if that makes it down, and we're going to check some ones that are complete just to see if they actually do get complete or not. What happens, basically what this means is once this gets down to the D price, if it does, you might see a notification up here, and in the notification tab is basically where all the new chart patterns show up so that you can keep up to date. You can set the alert, turn your sound up, and that way you don't have to sit at your computer all day waiting for these patterns to occur and keep searching for them. You can go about your day and listen for that notification ping. So what's happening is we're just waiting for that to drop basically before the pattern is complete, and then you'd be expected to then take it long to target 1 and perhaps 2 with a stop loss here. It also down the bottom here shows you the risk reward. So it's 3.8 is the risk reward. So that means that for every 1 part risk, you're expecting to make 3.8 profit. Let's scroll down a little further and we find a complete pattern here. So that happened 5 minutes before on the USD yen. So 5 minutes before this pattern was alerted. I'm just going to click that. It's a cipher pattern. Now what Manara Trading Tool does is paint the points and the levels on the chart so that you can actually see what it's meant to look like, what the pattern is kind of exemplifying. And this one's a cipher pattern. Again, I wouldn't particularly notice this if I was scanning through my charts manually, just trying to look for a setup. So this one's been complete for about half an hour. It was completed at this wick here, and you would have got a notification. It would have been around here. I'm not too sure on the actual notification time, if it does it when it touches or if it's just at the end of the candle, like the time kind of outlines here. And what happened was, let's say you got in at the entry or a little bit after because you got the close here. So that wick basically means it was open, came up, came back down, and you've closed at this price here. Now the market for the next 5 minutes actually came up higher, but it didn't get all the way up to the outlined stop loss that this tool is talking about. So it would have kept people in the trade had they have followed this kind of outline that they give you. Now people would have then got in at the entry and looking for a short position. And the reason we can tell that is because of the entry, and then you're aiming towards the green lines, the target 1 and 2, which have been hit according to this chart here. So you're always aiming for the targets and avoiding the stop loss. So in this case, this would be a short position, so you'd be selling the US dollar yen, and it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It had 5 straight candles going down. That target has now been hit, and most people, I guess, should be out of that trade based on this information. It's giving you a live update on what's actually going on. So we can see here the price is actually perhaps rejecting. It might continue downwards, but for the purposes of this pattern, the target has been hit on both 1 and 2. So the risk reward on that was 1.76. So really good trade there, I guess, from about half an hour ago, had you have got onto that and avoided the stop loss. So you can see here the pattern is painted out. And for me, I wouldn't particularly notice this as a particular pattern. It's just not something that I would particularly pick up on unless I really studied the charts and took my time. I'm going to go down to the next one. This one's a 4.4 risk reward. At the same time, this one was completed. I'm going to open that up, see what actually happened. Was it successful? Was it not? So this is the Euro CAD. I'm just going to have a look at what has set up. So we've got the A, B, C, and D. It's a deep crab, but this one is complete. So you can see what we looked at earlier was an incomplete crab. Just going to find that. Here we go. Deep crab, 5 minute, and 4.4 risk reward. So we're going to zoom in, see what's going on. I can move this. So that's actually completed, and we're waiting to get to the entry. Now that's a really tight stop loss. It's really quite predicted. It's just a bit above this pricing here, which I would perhaps be concerned that the market will just soak up all this volume in this little zone. But again, it comes down to seeing the different patterns, seeing what happens and learning from this tool. And it's a really good way to experience what happens following a pattern. So this one's still in progress. We haven't quite gotten up to the entry just yet. And the target is outlined again. What direction are we going here? We're going short because the entry is above the targets, target 1 and 2. The stop loss is very close, but it's a 4.4, I believe it was, risk reward. So that's a really good risk reward if it does pay off. Some people may not trade it just blankly like this or blindly following this tool. They might actually wait for the entry price to be triggered and then look for other signals. So in some of the other videos, I talk about using Apex Trader Funding or the Trade Day Tradeovate account and using a volume footprint. So this is how the pros actually trade, by using a volume footprint to see where the volume's actually coming in and out of the market and who has the power. Do the buyers have the power? Do the sellers have the power? And measuring that balance to see who's actually going to win and eventually take the price in the direction they want it to go. While you can use a tool like this, I believe that you're best off learning as much as you can about the markets. Keep studying, keep training, keep an idea of what's going on in the markets, how to read your volume footprint and your order flow, which you can get through Apex Trader Funding or Trade Day. They're prop firms, and they give you access to see some of this market volume that's actually coming through. Using these tools blindly is not really something that I would advise. I really think that you do need to keep training. You know, trading is a difficult thing to do, and it relies on patience. So for example, when you see an incomplete pattern, waiting for the market to actually set up. So for example, if you had have traded early, obviously if you bought at the C aiming for the D, you would have been doing quite well. But in saying that, it's about waiting for these setups to actually get into position. So for example, if somebody just got short at the D, they would now be in loss, and their risk reward would be quite different from what's expected here. So being patient is key. Learning other strategies and systems and elements to help you make better decisions, along with understanding the fundamentals and the news announcements and that kind of thing, is really important. So don't just rely on any one tool. These people that, you know, they yell out, oh, everything, it's a scam, or that kind of thing. They're really just focusing on one element that people are perhaps using and utilizing, but actually using a whole suite of tools and information to help them along the way. You can't just use a single tool, in my opinion, and be successful. You need to have a suite of tools, experience, knowledge, that kind of thing, and always be at it, working hard, learning as much as you can. Anyone that chases a single thing, these big wins and that kind of thing, they're always going to have the wrong idea unless they happen to get lucky, which is a very rare circumstance. Trading is much more about being slow, steady, and consistent, aiming for those smaller percentage returns, in my opinion, because what you can do with that is then if you come across money or you get better jobs, you earn more money to then save, you've got a place to store that money and actually use it later on and build a consistent framework to invest into. This is obviously compared to things like shares, property, that kind of thing, where property is a great vehicle. However, shares, sometimes you don't have control. You don't always own rights to make decisions around the assets and that kind of thing. Whereas trading, it's your account, you make the decisions. And if you're in the know and you know what you're doing, ultimately you would prefer to have that control. Because sometimes the shares that you can buy, the directors, even the staff and that kind of thing, don't always act in the best interest of the shareholders, even though on an economic basis they're meant to. Sometimes they just don't. So that's why trading is a great way for people to practice and have a vehicle for them to invest into, effectively investing in themselves. So that's my, pitch on the Manara tool. It is helpful, but you need to also learn about the markets, learn about yourself, understand risk management, do the whole lot, because just one element isn't going to make you successful in pretty much anything you do, not just trading. But again, trading is quite a challenging concept and a way to make money because the money is there and it is on the table, and people sometimes obviously amp up their risk, or if they see a losing trade, you can see your money right there going up and down, and it can cause frustration and greed and fear and all these emotions. And it's about managing those emotions as well as understanding the market. We can see here that we've touched the entry. I've been talking for long enough now that the entry has been touched, and we're expecting the market to fold down to target 1 and 2, but if it does come up to this stop loss point here, it would be a failed pattern. We'll come back to that a little later in the video, and I'm just going to go through some more of what the Manara tool can do for you, particularly from an educational standpoint, understanding the markets, building up experience on what actually happens with these patterns. Going to scroll down, so we've got our first failed trade here, so it's a US dollar CAD. It's a shark pattern, M5, so the 5 minute, and this occurred about 45 minutes ago. Risk reward of 2.98. So I'm just going to go click on that one. It's going to pull up the layout of the pattern. If this was incomplete and you get an alert, anyone who bought that would now be in profit. And just looking at the layout, so we had the entry price, it didn't even look like turning around. It just went straight through the stop loss. So really not the best setup there, and it didn't even look like turning around. So this is where you would use other tools and other information, such as the order flow and the footprint, to try and determine if this is a good setup or not. Some people might have seen some selling coming in at this wick perhaps, but it's a bit hard to tell without using the footprint in conjunction with this trading tool over here. So no good on that one. However, if you had have traded on the incomplete phase, so from C, buying that and then waiting for it to go to D and even beyond, then you would have been sitting quite nicely on that one. I'll just keep scrolling down to give you an example of some failed. There's quite a few failed here. It's good to learn about what has failed and what works. So we've got the BAT. This one has been A, B, C. If you had have bought at the incomplete phase up to D, you'd be sitting very nicely once again, but it went straight through the entry into the stop. It's hovering around there. So again, another failed setup, but the incomplete pattern, if you bought from C to D, that would have been quite a good setup. So I'm just going to go back and check what's actually happened on the one we were looking at earlier, see what's going on with it. Is it going down further towards the D? It came down a bit, but it's now going back up and floating around. So potentially this pattern may not formally be completed. I'll go back down now to where we're seeing the success and failed patterns. And I can see here another, so this one's a BAT, Euro Aussie going down, 7.08 risk reward. That's really huge. It's failed though. And what can we see again? So A, B, C, incomplete alert would have fired around this level here. Anyone that bought C to D would be in profit still. Obviously that's not how the patterns are effectively meant to work, but if they're laid out and you've hit 3 points, what are the chances you're going to hit that fourth point? I don't know, but so far from checking each of these patterns, it's looking okay. So we'll go down again. So we've got the Euro Aussie on a deep crab, C to D once again, hit, even though so that this has failed as a trade setup, but incomplete alert made it go quite nicely. Have a look at what this incomplete one is showing. A, B, C. We're looking for the final element to complete this pattern. You would have got an alert for an incomplete pattern here, and it's really heading down quite nicely. So had you have shorted that from the C, from the incomplete alert, perhaps it would have been a good setup. This is obviously going back through the history just to learn about what's happened, perhaps in the last sort of hour and a half, 2 hours, to see what's working, what isn't. So there's always patterns coming through. It's quite a good tool. I'm just going to scroll to the top and see. I might actually refresh. So just to note, I'm in the monitor tab and I'm going to check now the latest patterns that are showing as complete just to see what they're doing. So we've got the Euro Aussie BAT. Now I've hit the entry. Once again, C to D, really quite a positive spin. You wouldn't have taken any heat on that pattern had you have followed the incomplete rule and got in quite early. There's just this wick here that might have caused a bit of panic or concern, but it got right up there. And just check. So it hasn't reached the official entry price. So what that means is this pattern is expected to go a little higher than this D point and then fall to the targets down here. But again, C to D would have gone really well as an incomplete pattern, and you're looking for that final element to fill that pattern. So getting in earlier seems like a potential just consideration. Here we go, we've got one now that's incomplete, which I keep talking about. So A, B, C, and you would have got an alert perhaps just around this candle here, and it's expecting to go up to this D level. At the moment it is slightly higher than where the alert would have come through, but will it get all the way up to here? I'm not sure. And then people would be perhaps looking to use these entry, target and stop loss to get into the trade. But using these incomplete status patterns, they often fulfill that pattern and get to where they're going. Sometimes obviously they're not going to get there as well, so just keep that in mind that they don't always get to the other point in the pattern. Check another incomplete one. Again, it's just going straight towards that D. Another incomplete one. Again, it's heading straight for that target, basically taking no heat there. This one's complete. It's still looking to get up to the entry before it goes down. Perhaps this grey box is an estimate that's pre-done. I'm not too sure, because a lot of these seem to hit this D level and then come down. but maybe they're expecting the pattern to then shoot the price up a little bit and then come back down as it's, I guess, outlining the price. But what I'm really liking about this tool is it's alerting you that there's an incomplete pattern, and it's expecting it to go and fulfill the pattern by reaching this level before people start getting into trades. You know, who's to say that you shouldn't get in early? Look, I'm sure there's a lot of traders out there that say that's wrong, but at the end of the day, the market is the leader in this. It tells you whether you're right or wrong at the end of your trade, and it is what it is. So just going through, scanning a heap of examples just to show you what it looks like and what you can see. So this all happened 20 minutes ago from now or thereabouts. So it's hit the C, would have gotten a notification, and kind of up and down. It's not really going anywhere, but you probably would be in profit at that point, depending on where you got the alert and where you got in. I feel like that gives you a bit of an idea of what we look for in this tool and that kind of thing, and how to use it. But I'm just going to show some examples of a successful setup as well, following the pattern completed. So C to D, look at that. There was no heat taken in between that phase. The entry was touched, and then it came down and touched both the targets. So that's a really good setup. That was a couple of hours ago on the New Zealand dollar USD as a cipher. So you can actually, if you don't like certain patterns, say for example the shark or the bat, you can actually uncheck them in the settings area. So you've got all the different pattern types, and you can get rid of the ones that you don't actually want to see. You can also choose certain time frames. So if you like bigger time frames, you may get less of them, and you'd really want to hope they work when they actually show up. But if you don't like the 5 minute, for example, if they're too frequent, you can just uncheck that and they'll disappear from the notifications and this monitor page here as well. So I'm just going to go find another failed. Here's a successful. Now, by the looks of that, I'm just going to move this out of the way a bit. To me, that looks like it would have failed, but I guess what this grey box is saying is if price reaches D and then is in this little zone, you can get short in this case, for example, so this grey box. And if it's actually been completed, perhaps the entry doesn't have to be triggered exactly. Obviously that's going to affect the risk reward, and it shot straight down through both targets, but then it shot straight back up. So if you didn't get out at the right targets, if you didn't have your orders put in correctly, or you're not watching it closely enough, within about 10 minutes, it would have came back up and stopped you out according to this stop loss here. It looks like it fell straight back down. So it just depends how you would have played that actual trade. That was actually back on January 12, back to January 19 here, so last week. Have a look at what that is saying. And the reason this is incomplete but it's so far back is because it's on the daily. So D is for daily. And look at that. The C has been hit. Depending on when you get the alert, you may be in profit or about break even. And this pattern is really just waiting for it to then track back down to the D. It's a really long time frame, so you might be waiting for some time. One thing you want to check though is the swaps. So you don't want to be paying an overnight fee. It's too big, I guess, on the pound yen. You just want to check your swaps, your swap fees. Sometimes you can get paid for your overnight fees as well. So it can be a benefit if you're going to hold for longer periods of time. And then once it reaches this D, you've got a trade suggestion here on the tool that says entry to go up to target, and then here's your stop loss. So if it did get down here and you were short, for example, that's quite a long distance away. So I'm just going to have a look through here as well, keep scrolling, just to give you guys an example of what you can do and see. Now, C to D, straight away, took almost no heat all the way through on an incomplete, but then once the pattern did get complete, it came straight up to the stop loss and closed out the suggested trade, which seems to happen quite a bit, but then this C to D is often very on point. So maybe there's a hidden message in this tool and in the notification framework that perhaps you only want to view incomplete patterns, which you can do. So I've selected all incomplete, and I'm just going to come back up, set the date to the most recent. So we've got 5 minutes, incomplete, and let's say I'd get long on the pound yen, New Zealand yen. Obviously I'm a little late on this one, that's already taken off. This one would have got short. This one would have got long. It's kind of holding its own but not really going anywhere. This one went up but it's tracking back down, so I would be a bit worried about this setup. Now these are all trades that have happened in the last sort of half an hour by the looks of the timestamp there, and obviously the candles. Just checking through, what have we got here? We've got a double bottom. Now I'm not really convinced that's a double bottom. To me, I'm looking for perhaps 2 wicks, the edge point. So like this, that looks more like a double top to me, and then to short it from there. Whereas this activity here, it's sort of more like almost like an Elliott wave rather than a bottom, because you've got this pricing structure down here. This doesn't reach as low. So if it was mountain peaks, you'd have a taller one and a shorter one, which is not really a double bottom in my opinion. But I could be wrong, I might be looking at the wrong things, but it seems to be working for me on the index markets quite well, and it's easy to spot. So you've got, for example here, 2 prices. If this was all lower, you've got 2 prices very close to each other and they're both rejecting. Can be a good indication to go short from there type thing. So it's now looking to touch the entry point and then break through. I'm not particularly convinced that that's a good one, but it could work, it may not. You'd have to do your research. Continuing on. So this one's a bit flat for the moment. It's not going straight up to the final element here at the D, but we'll keep looking. This one, it's kind of come up, but it's not going as quickly as some of the others. This one's tracking okay. Again, same with that one. This one's going quite well. And this is all tracking from C to D as an incomplete pattern. So it depends what you want to look for. Do you want to actually let the pattern complete and then try and get your risk reward out after the pattern's complete, or do you want to get in at the incomplete phase looking to simply complete the pattern and get up to this point and take a buy? So which is basically the opposite to what this tool is telling you, but sometimes you have to read between the lines and see what's working in the actual live market. C to D, it's tracking down. C to D, it's kind of tracking down. If as long as you got in at that candle at the start of this one, you'd be sitting okay. If you had have waited a little bit, it may have gone too far, but you would see that. You see it's already dropped. You don't want to get in to things too late. You know, if you've already seen a big move, that could be the end of the move. It may not be. But you just want to know the market, know your style of trading and what you like to trade. So I'm just looking for every incomplete one that's looking to get to that final element. And they seem to be tracking quite well towards it. So these are on 15-minute candles now. I'm just going to jump over the notification to show you how that works as well. So we've got completed at the timestamp and all the information up here. The settings. So you've got C point and D point. I wonder if I select C point. I'm just clicking that to see where it is. So this one has actually, on the notification tab, if you select only C point and it's got a C here, it shows you what's incomplete. So it's gone A, B, C, and it's looking for D. And you've got a couple of candles here below that C point, but this one's a green one, so it's kind of looking like it's coming back up. It may not continue downwards. So that's something you've just got to watch and learn and assess That's what trading is. It's learning, it's knowing yourself, knowing your risk in your account, and just making assessments of the market. And of course, you don't have to take every single one of these. You can look at ones that you feel like they're going to go in the direction. You can consider other elements such as the order flow, like I mentioned earlier, trend, longer term outlook, and that kind of thing, along with fundamental information as well. So any tool or any information that you find, it's often good to use it in conjunction with additional information, additional data, to make sure that you have all of the elements in your favor. You want to stack the deck in your favor. You don't want to just go into anything hoping for the best. You want to jump into trades that are going to give you the best opportunity effectively. So that's my review of the Manara Trading Tool, is that there's a few ways to use it. You can potentially look from C to D point as an incomplete status, or you can look for the completed trades, which you can see here, wait for the entry and hope they go to the target that the tool suggests. And then I'm just going to check one more thing before I let you go. So the mature one is completed 1 to 4 candles ago and nearly completed patterns. And we'll just see. So these ones are well underway. We'll see what they've produced. So the entry's been touched. Had a nice green bar here, but not really much motion as of yet. This one's well on its way to the D level. Well on its way again to the D level. So the mature one seems to be like it's already been completed, it's been and done, and perhaps you might just want to check whether it's actually done well or not, just for your own educational purposes, and see what actually happens after. Now the reason I like Manara Tool is because it paints the elements there for you. Rather than trying to squint your eyes and hope you see a pattern, it just plots it using all the levels and the measurements and that kind of thing. So it makes it quite easy. And then also the notification tab. So you can turn it up and it will send you a ding, and you know that something new has happened in the world of patterns that you've set it up for. So checking your securities, making sure it's only set to ones that you might consider trading. So you don't want to trade some of the commodities perhaps. You can turn them all off and select only the ones that you actually want to see. Now, if you do want to use this Manara Trading Tool, there's a link in the description if you want to check it out. It is a pretty cool tool. I do enjoy using it and having a look at the market, seeing what's setting up. But at the same time, it's not a clean fix. It's not a full way to trade. I do believe that it's to be used in conjunction with other tools, education, and that kind of thing. You don't want to just blindly follow anything you see. It's important to make your own assessment, to educate yourself, to understand both the markets and yourself and your account, along with risk management, because all of these elements really do play a huge part in the success or failure of your trading business. Link in the description below to go and get this tool if you do want it. Alternatively, there is plenty of trading found on YouTube and the internet on manual patterns, finding them, seeing them, but personally, I wouldn't be able to identify these patterns easily, and that's why I have this tool. If you do need the referral code, it's also in the description, but the link should take you straight there. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or took something positive from it, please hit the like button below. It lets me know this is helping others. To see more great content like this, please subscribe, hit the bell icon, and stay updated with the latest.